Welcome back, everybody, to the Seattle Sonics MyNBA series here on NBA 2K22. With season number 1 officially in the books for our Sonics, it's time to recap the season, see what happened around the rest of the league, go over the playoffs, and do the opening phases of the offseason. So obviously, the regular season for the Sonics did not see a lot of wins. We finished with a record of 21-61, which is the worst in the NBA. We also had the worst point differential by a pretty wide margin. We were not expected to be good going into the year, and although we started off like 12-10, things came crashing down, and they went crashing hard. But there were some positives this year, which we will talk about after we go over the NBA standings. The Utah Jazz finished with the top seed in the West, with the Lakers, Clippers, Warriors, Suns, and Blazers all making the playoffs, and the Nuggets, Mavericks, Grizzlies, and Kings getting play-in spots. In the East, the Bucks got the 1 seed, with the Nets, Bulls, Sixers, Celtics, and Heat all getting in, all within 3 games of each other, and the Hawks, Hornets, Cavs, and our expansion buddies, the St. Louis Spirits, are in the play-in tournament. We will keep tabs on St. Louis throughout the playoffs. I think we'll simcast a few of their games. Even though I don't really want them to win, because I want to be the first expansion team to get a championship, it would be a little bit cool to see them maybe win a round. I guess that'd be unlikely, but you never know. Let's take a look at the stats and recap how our team in specific did. Our leading scorer was Jordan Poole, who averaged around 16 a game. I think Poole had a pretty good season. His numbers did go down as the season went along, although not by that much. I think overall, Poole is a good piece for the future. I really want to improve his playmaking in the offseason. I want to turn him from a wing into more of a combo guard, get those assist numbers up. He did have 3 per game this year, which isn't awful, but I would like to get that number up. Cam Reddish's stats went up throughout the season, and although Jordan Poole may have been the statistically better player, I still think Reddish has a better chance than anybody on this roster to be the long-term face of the franchise. And of course, Poole and Reddish are our main building blocks. Those two are the only 2 players who started all 82 games this season. Kelly Oubre was a nice spark plug for us, played in 76 games, started in half of them, averaged around 13 and 5. Cam Payne was a little bit disappointed. I expected him to really play well as one of the veterans. Not to say he was bad, but I expected a little bit more out of him. Maybe he's a player we look to trade in the offseason, get a little bit more athletic of a point guard position. It was a weird year for Xavier Tillman. He started the season off really hot, and then his numbers came down fairly quickly. He was really good defensively, though, but I don't know if he's the long-term center of the future. He is only 6'8", but I do like him as a long-term piece for us. R.J. Hampton was a nice player off the bench, kind of like Jordan Poole. I want to improve that playmaking. Hampton only averaged 2.2 per game, but other than that, I think R.J. Hampton had a really strong year. Bol was solid, and I definitely enjoyed playing with him in-game. He averaged around 8.5 and 4. Bol's an unrestricted free agent this offseason. He says he plans to re-sign with the team, but I'm not willing to give him some gigantic contract. It depends on what he's asking for and if we can reach a mutual agreement. Josh Hart was a really fun player, 7.6 points, 8.6 rebounds. I enjoyed using him. Jaden Springer, I'd like to hold on to. I think he can be the backup point guard of the future. Showed some flashes in limited playing time this year. A player who I feel like I've kind of slept on throughout the season is Ayo Dosunmu. Only averaged around 8 minutes per game, but he averaged 4.5 points. His shooting splits are not the greatest, but I definitely want to keep Ayo around. I think we're going to get him more playing time next year. I didn't realize his numbers were so comparable to Jaden Springer's, who played in more minutes than Dosunmu. Justice Winslow, I don't really see him as a long-term piece. We mainly acquired him just to possibly get another asset to move in the offseason. And then BJ Boston, I'd like to hold on to. He is only a 67 overall, but I do like his upside. And then Kurucs, Brown, and Jones didn't really play a whole lot. I don't think Greg Brown ever played for us. I think those minutes were in Portland. Looking at the league leaders, do not mind all of these random players at the top, like J.J. Redick, Trent Forrest, Cassius Winston, Jahlil Okafor. All of the stats are messed up, and a lot of the awards were messed up too. I had to literally manually edit all of the awards, which was kind of a pain in the butt. So Steph Curry, as you can see, technically 19th in scoring, but he is the top actual scorer here of players who got legit NBA minutes. I don't know why 2K glitched like this, but oh well, there's not really a whole lot you can do. So let's talk about the awards, starting with the MVP. The game originally gave it to Trent Forrest, but I modified it and chose Giannis Antetokounmpo of the top seeded Milwaukee Bucks. The reigning Finals MVP averaged a career high in points along with 13 boards and 5 assists. Giannis was the best player in the league this year. I felt like he deserved it. Looking at the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were one of the biggest surprises this season, led by a strong campaign from this year's Rookie of the Year, Evan Mobley. You guys thought I'd be biased and give it to Cade, but Mobley's numbers were actually a little bit better, averaging 15 and 9 for a playoff team. Keep in mind, also good defensive stats. For the Sixth Man of the Year, I went with a player who averaged the most points per game, who was a consistent bench player, and also happened to do a few other things well, and that player is Tyler Hero. I know he's a pretty controversial figure, and he didn't really improve all that much this season, but there weren't really many bench players who had better numbers than him, so I felt inclined to give him the award. For a few of the awards, like Most Improved, the game glitched and did not let me edit it, so it says Josh Jackson won it, but Jackson, he only played in the G League, so again, he does not count. So the actual winner will be another Cleveland Cavalier in Darius Garland. With the departure of Colin Sexton in the Ben Simmons deal, that opened more of an opportunity for Garland to be the main scorer, and he flourished. 25 points per game, over 6.6 assists, really good season from him, and then Quinn Snyder ended up winning the Coach of the Year. Let's talk about the All-NBA teams, starting with the first team. You have Steph Curry, the NBA's leading scorer, who averaged around 30 a game. Joining him is Luka Doncic, who had another great season. Jason Tatum, probably the biggest surprise on the list. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nikola Jokic, who nearly averaged a triple-double. On the second team, we got Damian Lillard and Donovan Mitchell as the guards. LeBron James is back, along with Julius Randle picking up where he left off last year. And at center, it's the big fella, Joel Embiid, who averaged 14.5 rebounds per game. The third team has Darius Garland, Trae Young, Anthony Davis, Zion Williamson, and Karl Anthony Towns, who could be on his way out of Minnesota in the offseason, which we will talk about once we get to the offseason. So you may notice there were no Brooklyn Nets on the All-NBA teams. The closest was actually Kyrie Irving. Say what you want about the guy, but he did have a good season, and he was eligible to play, unlike real life. KD and Harden did not have statistically dominant enough seasons to be on All-NBA teams. For all defense, we have DeJounte Murray, Ben Simmons, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Anthony Davis, and Bam Adebayo on the first team. And then for the second team, we got Lonzo Ball, the Clipper duo of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, neither of whom made an All-NBA team, interestingly enough, along with Jonathan Isaac. Again, say what you want about the guy, but he's a good defender, and Rudy Gobert. As for the all-rookie teams, obviously headlined by the Rookie of the Year winner, Evan Mobley, the first team also has Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Scotty Barnes, and Jalen Suggs. So the top 5 picks all ended up being the top 5 rookies. I know, ironic. On the second team, we got James Bouknight of the Hornets, Josh Giddey, along with Davion Mitchell, mainly for his defense, Franz Wagner, and Alperen Şengün. So those are the All-NBA teams that I had to manually pick myself because the game is broken. So now let's talk about the playoffs. Starting with the play-in, we will mainly be focusing on the St. Louis Spirits because I'm most interested in them. In the first round, they are going to be playing up against the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I think are quite a bit better than St. Louis, but this game is back and forth right now. I don't think there's been a deficit in this game larger than like 5. I mean, these teams are going at it. We might have to hop in. With 41 seconds left, the Spirits are up by 2. I want to watch the rest of this game. We're probably not going to do much of this throughout the playoffs, but I figured why not. So here are the Cavs. Darius Garland, the All-NBA third-team member, gets the screen from Markkanen. Wide open layup, and he passes it up. Ben Simmons influenced him way too much. How do you not take that layup to tie the game? Garland kind of has to heave it up before the shot clock winds down, but it's no good. Great defense from John Wall, who is fouled. Darius Garland fumbled the bag, and he knows it. I don't know how you fail that bad if you're Garland. John Wall at the line, not a historically great free-throw shooter, but he is going to sink both of them despite the loud crowd here in Cleveland. The St. Louis Spirits will take a 4-point lead, and Taco Fall is in the game. There you go. A lot of the starters are still there, but for whatever reason, Taco Fall is now in its center. Deep 3 from Isaac Okoro, rims out. That's probably your dagger as John Wall is fouled again, as that was Taco Fall. the 7'6" big fella who fouled him. So John Wall's going to sink these free throws, and it looks like the St. Louis Spirits are going to win their first ever play-in game, upsetting the favored and home Cleveland Cavaliers. So it looks like Ben Simmons and Darius Garland seasons are over. But look at this. Ben Simmons sinks the three. Ben Simmons just made a three-pointer with a few seconds to go in a playoff game. Unbelievable. It does not matter whatsoever because the Cavs are still going to lose. But how about that? Ben Simmons took a three and it went in. Sixers fans have to be cringing out of control right now. St. Louis will run out the remainder of the clock, so the Spirits end up defeating the Cavs 107-104. So the Spirits will battle it out with either Atlanta or Charlotte for the 8 seed. Ben Simmons had damn near a triple-double. Garland and Mobley both played pretty well too, but it was not enough. Al Horford led the scoring with 21 for St. Louis. Wall, Dragic, Thad Young, and Robert Covington also in the double figures. So Charlotte beats Atlanta, so Charlotte is officially the 7th seed. The Nuggets are officially the 7th seed in the West. So Dallas will play Sacramento, and Atlanta will play the Spirits to see who ends up being the 8th seed. We're going to stand cast this one again. Atlanta starts off hot, but look at the Spirits taking control. St. Louis looks like they had this game in the bag, and in their first season in the league, the St. Louis Spirits will get a playoff spot. They beat Atlanta 114-92. Trae Young scored 30. The Hawks apparently have both Bogdanoviches, so that makes things confusing. John Wall and Brook Lopez with 18 each. So both of the 10 seeds, St. Louis and Sacramento, won their respective games. So the two 10 seeds ends up in the playoffs. The Spirits are playing Milwaukee in the first round. This probably won't go well, and sure enough, they win in 5 because logic. The number 1 seeded Milwaukee Bucks are eliminated in 5 games by an expansion team. There you go. The 2-seeded Bulls also lost to Charlotte, so both of the Eastern Conference playoff teams won their first series. However, St. Louis ends up getting swept by Boston in the second round, so their Cinderella story is over. We got the Jazz and Clippers in the West. The Clippers ended up beating the Lakers. And then the Nets and Celtics in the East. And our finals is going to be between the Clippers and the Celtics. A surprising matchup. Two teams who historically have disappointed a little bit in the playoffs. But Jason Tatum has carried the Celtics to the finals against Kawhi Leonard and playoff P, Paul George. I'm rooting for the Clippers. I want Paul George to get a ring. I've been a Paul George truther for the longest time. And in Game 1, PG scores 28, leads the Clippers to a win. Game 2, Paul George with 22. Marcus Morris was actually the leading scorer. So not a great start for Boston as they end up losing Game 3. Big performance from Tatum for the Clippers. It was Paul George who led the way. And the Clippers end up sweeping them with Paul George winning Finals MVP. That makes me happy. He deserves it. Jaylen Brown had 33, George with 27. So there you go. Our very first champions are the Los Angeles Clippers, who beat Boston in 4. Kawhi Leonard wins another ring. Paul George is an NBA champion, I think cementing himself as a Hall of Famer. And former Seattle Sonics, Jamias Ramsey, who played 1 minute with us this season, is an NBA champion as well. So we're going to do the early phases of the offseason. Before that, I do want to talk about the draft class real quick. Next episode will be the draft preview, so I will go into more detail. But I do want to go over a few very interesting storylines to talk about before the next episode. So as I've said throughout the season, Buzz Wigginton Jr. out of Michigan has been the top projected number 1 pick, but that has changed. We have a consensus top 3 of Diami Christensen, Buzz Wigginton, and Jayon Azkavan. However, it seems like Christensen is the odds-on favorite to go number 1, and if not him, it's probably going to be Azkavan. So Buzz Wigginton is no longer the top projected player in the class. It seems like a 3-way tie. Apollo Steele, who was once projected in the second round, is now a consensus lottery pick. And there are a few other players who have moved down the board quite a bit, which we will discuss in the next episode. Looking at the player retirements, there are quite a few big ones. I decided to override a couple. Chris Paul retiring really does not make sense. He just signed a big contract extension, so that's kind of pointless. And then Kyle Lowry as well. He just signed a big deal with the Miami Heat. I think both Paul and Lowry still have multiple years of basketball left, so I don't think they would want to retire at this point. There were quite a few other big-name players: Udonis Haslem, Isaiah Thomas, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard. Dwayne Casey retires as the head coach of the Pistons. I thought about overriding that one because he just got a new contract too, but I decided to let it fly. So Dwight and Melo make the Hall of Fame. Dwight's Magic number and Melo's Nuggets number gets retired. I feel like Carmelo's Knicks number should probably get retired as well. Looking at the league meetings, I did want to add one. This is something we did last year in the Cavs series in our very first offseason, and it's pretty much abolishing the one-and-done rule, letting high school seniors who are at least 18 years old enter the draft straight out of high school. I think this is something the NBA will look to do within the next few years, so I've decided to add it into our series as well. Now on to the draft lottery. The Seattle Sonics own the #1 odds for the top pick in this year's draft, and you'll have to find out what happens in the next one.